Welcome. As you can see, this is our JOSM Basics or JOSM for Beginners webinar. We do this, every so often, probably a couple times a year. We try to do this one. We also do an advanced webinar to follow up with this. So that'll be in a couple of months. We try to keep these things spaced out enough to make updates and take the feedback from the first webinars and take them forward into the next. My name is Russell Defner. I've been with the training working group for a long time, but I actually moved to the Philippines almost a year ago now and haven't really been able to participate due to time zone, but they let me come back and host these things and help out where I can. Which slides here? Just a real quick overview of what we're going to talk about. We'll start with kind of the basics of JOSM itself, of where to go get JOSM, how to set it up, an overview of the controls, those kind of things. Get into editing a little bit. Obviously, we're going to try to keep this down to like an hour and a half. There's a ton of information. JOSM is a very powerful, robust editor, so we're going to kind of just touch the surface on a few things, including editing. Dive into the building tool, because that's an important one for a lot of the mapping that the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team does, and then also talk a little bit about the built-in validation tools in JOSM itself, so that you can make sure that the editing you're doing is not causing issues or errors in the database. I already introduced myself a little bit as the host here. With me we have Ralph, Michael, and Jeffrey, and they'll kind of take turns going over different topics. And we're going to start off with Michael. So if you're ready, Michael, I will stop sharing my screen and hopefully you'll be able to take over.
Yeah. So welcome from me as well. I'm currently chairing the training working group, and I've been involved with HOT for quite a couple of years. So do you see my JOSM screen right now?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. So let me first switch to how to get JOSM. So the main point where you should get your browser to is josm.openstreetmap.de, and then on the download page. That page contains a couple of options for different operating systems, and it also explains a couple of the bits which can go wrong. So the main point is, well, JOSM uses Java, so you need Java first, and you only need a Java runtime environment. You don't need a source development kit, and a browser plugin won't help you either. So if you need to install Java, only get the runtime environment. If you're on Linux, then your package management will offer that. If you're on Windows, there are a couple of hints here if one scrolls down on that page. Known issues, Java issues. So it explains a couple of the things there. I would recommend for JOSM itself to simply download the jar file, and you should always rely on the tested one, which is the stable version. Latest would mean experimental out of the Java kitchen, which is certainly not recommended, but the tested ones usually work. So installing Java and downloading JOSM jar archive is usually everything which is required. Then you can simply double click on your jar file, and then it should look like this. Well, first of all, we have to tweak it a little bit. And the only tweak I made before this session was switching the language to English so that we're all on the same page. And the first thing you should do is that you should call the preferences here in the edit menu, preferences, or you hit F12, and that gives you a couple of options. And there are some of them which we should really tweak right now. The first of all, even, well, you're all new to JOSM, but nevertheless, please tick the expert mode box. It opens a couple of more options, some of which will be needed. Then if you want to change the language, that's what I did. Here, this look and feel tab offers a setting for the language. Usually, by default, it will be the language installed in your browser or in your operating system, but you can switch, of course, to any of those available here. That would require a restart. Then the next bit here is we simply switch by using any of these icons here on the left side. Connection settings is the one with the globe. And the best idea is for authentication to use OAuth. Well, you need authentication, of course, if you want to upload anything back to OpenStreetMap. And OAuth means it simply makes a connection to your OpenStreetMap account by storing some encrypted tokens. So no passwords will be stored in some readable files. So you simply say authorize now, and then it will move you. Then you have to simply add your OpenStreetMap username and password, and then say authorize and accept the access token. And then this token will be stored within your preferences. And every time you open up JOSM, you don't need to go through that step anytime. JOSM is an expandable software. It offers a couple of plugins. And this icon here shows configure available plugins. At first, you don't see any, so you start by downloading the list with this button in the lower left. And then you see in alphabetical order all the plugins which are available. That's an overwhelming number, and some of them are really specialized, but there are two of them which we really need pretty often. So the first one would be the buildings tool. Buildings tools here is one you definitely need. We'll come to that back to that pretty soon. And another one which contains a couple of options is the utils plugin. So look for utils. Yes, utils plugin 2 is another one. These two are the most important ones. It's the ones which we just, no, we didn't install them yet. So we have to say, okay, first it downloads them, and that means we should be ready for that. Let me get back to the plugins and let me have a look. Okay, so these two are installed. They don't need any reboot of the JOSM software. The next thing you will need is remote control. We pretty always work with HOTS Tasking Manager, and the Task Manager would like to communicate with JOSM, so we have to enable that. And the icon here, which looks like a remote control, is the remote control. And fortunately, you don't have to meddle around with all those settings. Just enable it, and everything you see here is fine. So it'll work then out of the box. These are the most important preference to start with. And in order to explore the user interface a little bit further, just need to do at least something here. So let's open up a new layer, and we get a bit more of the user interface. And you see that on all sides of the main panel here, there are kinds of buttons and other panels. Just to get you a little idea of what they are always used for. The buttons here on the left side in the top part, they control the editing modes. By default, you're in selection mode, and there's almost a shortcut for that. That is S, and you will use that shortcut pretty frequently. And the other mode you will use very often is drawing nodes. So that's the add mode, which has shortcut A. if we move further down the line, here are those buttons which control the panels on the right side. There are panels for quite a number of tasks, but 3 of them are really important. We already see a number of them here. There is a layers panel which organizes all the data you can see. There is tags and memberships, which we need when we assign tags to any of the objects which we draw. And selection will contain information about any selected object. Relation is something more advanced, so we can just drop it out here for a while in order to save space. Don't worry, you can get everything back either by using one of these here. For instance, configure the map painting style would open up map paint styles. If you close that, you can easily get it back with one of the icons there. And there is also always a menu entry for everything. So Windows, that controls all those panels which we see on the right side. So don't worry, if you rearrange anything, if you click on the X to remove it, you can always get it back. In the, oops, yeah. So these are 2 important clicks. First of all, if you are editing something, if something is selected, Escape will always cancel that option, and S will always get back here to the selection mode, which is typically where your cursor should be in. Here, the bottom row contains some information panels. Here in the lower left part, you see the actual coordinates, and there is a quite nice feature. Often someone calls for help on Slack and says where the problem is, gives you geographical coordinates. Simply click here. Oops. Okay, make a right click and say jump to position. And then you can simply enter latitude and longitude, and it will take you to that specific position. Here in the top, we have a toolbar. It contains some of the most popular items from the menu. And the most important bit is it is configurable. So you simply go here, click on your right and say configure toolbar. And then you get here 2 panels. The left one shows all those tool buttons currently active. And the right one are those available, which is basically a copy from the menu. So we'll come to a few which come in handy so in a short while. So just to let you know, this is highly configurable, and I usually try to add those which I need more often and to kick out those which I don't need that often, just to keep it so that you really find, just to keep it to a manageable size here. And as far as the menu is concerned, some of the items you will need pretty often is, of course, download data, where you get access to the data we want to work with, and select some imagery. So Maxi Premium, for instance, is one of the ones we will use more often. And with the mouse wheel, you can simply move in and out. And with the right mouse button, you can shift the whole scenery, imagery, and including all loaded data. So, while in selection mode, you can select, and with delete, you can delete anything. Works like pretty much every editing program. So this first overview is just intended to give you an idea how to install JOSM and what this user interface will look like. In the remaining parts, we will tell you how to fill it with data and how to work with the data. So let's leave this first overview where it is. And well, unless you've got any questions at this stage, then Jeffrey will take up the part and talk a bit about layers.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. While Jeffrey's getting set up here, I have a poll for everybody. Just a simple question, kind of asking where everybody's sort of background is of, if you're coming to this webinar just as an individual that's interested in OpenStreetMap, or if this is, part of your regular job, those kind of things. So I'll leave that open while Jeffrey gets set up and ready.
Yeah, I'm ready to go, Russ.
All right. Yeah, I think you can we'll just leave that running in the background, and then if it's in your way, let me know, and I can close that poll, but go for it.
Okay. Yep, thank you. So yeah, I'm just going to take us briefly into the concept of
I was just trying to chat with Jeffrey to see if it was just me that lost his sound or not, but I think he has lost his internet connection, so that's too bad. Yeah, hopefully everybody's still got that poll open, and Jeffrey gets back in a reasonable amount of time. I think otherwise we might have to jump to, I think Michael, you're up again after Jeffrey, if I remember correctly.
Well, I could take up the part on layers as well, but let's just wait a minute if he comes back.
Yeah. It looks like almost everybody's voted, so I can actually, why don't we just look at the results of the poll while we're waiting? So yeah, as you can see, pretty much, the vast majority of people here are just, sort of volunteer OpenStreetMappers, and that's great. Yeah, I'm interested in these others. What exactly the others are? If you're one of the others and want to just type in the chat what you mean by others, I'm just curious, but. It's just great to see, yeah, so many people kind of coming on their own free will to learn about, a more advanced or, in many ways complicated editor versus like the ID editor or Potlatch that are, web-based and built in, and you don't need to do anything special to use those editors. But yeah, JOSM being more robust and having some functionality that doesn't quite work, only online. Yeah, it takes a little more work, but I'm glad to see all of you here. And it sounds like maybe Jeffrey is back.
yeah, sorry about that, Russ. I'm back.
Oh, great. Yeah, take it away.
Yeah, thank you. Sharing my screen again. Okay, so I was just mentioning that there are a few different ways how you can get your data into JOSM. One is just to go to the file and download data, and you'll have about 5 different options. So there is sleeping map, there is bookmarks, bounding box, areas and places, and then tile numbers. So with the first option, which is sleeping map, it will give you an overview map, and it's just a matter of zooming in to the place where you are interested in to map, and then you download data in that area, and then you get started mapping. So I'm just going to zoom into Jamaica here, into Runaway Bay, and I can just draw up like a rectangle, and then I click download. So the only thing you have to be aware of here, if you draw a huge area, it will not accept to download because it will be trying to download a lot of data. So you have to zoom in as much as possible so that you download a good size. So I'll go ahead and click download, and as you can see, it's opening up my data. So I have a data layer which has been loaded here. So I need more layers if I need to do some mapping. So as you can see, this is just a black screen. There is nothing much apart from the existing data. If I want other layers, I can add an imagery layer, for example. So this is Bing. So I've just added a different layer. And as you can see, now I see features below the data layer, and I can get started mapping. So yeah, one thing to know about layers, they come into orders, and you can always change the order of your layers. So for example, I can move Bing here to the top. So right now, my Bing layer is on top. But what you realize here is that my data layer has disappeared because it is below Bing. So always when you're mapping, just try to make sure your data layer is on top, because now you can see the features on top of the imagery. I can also add another imagery layer if I want. I've just added Maxa. So I can also compare now between Bing and Maxa if I want to see which one is more recent. So one of the options you have here is you can change the visibility of a layer. So on this blue icon here, which looks like an eye, if I can hide a layer. So I haven't removed my layer from my workspace. It is still there, but I can hide and unhide it. So this is Bing, and this is Maxa. So I'm able to switch in between the two, and I can compare the two layers. Yeah, the other thing that you can do, of course, with your layers, you can remove them. So I can, for example, delete the Maxa layer from my workspace. Doesn't mean that I've done, yeah, it's just I've removed it from my workspace, so it's no longer a layer I can work with. I also have this green tick, which shows which layer is active. So it is in line with the data layer, meaning that the data layer is now active, but I can also make the Bing active. So if you do that, you realize still your data layer becomes invisible. So always make sure your data layer is active, and then you do the mapping. One more thing that you can do with your Bing imagery layer is to change the visibility. So if I click on this button here, I can say I have a couple of other options. I can increase, for example, the colorfulness of my imagery. I can increase the sharpness. So sometimes you may need to tweak your imagery layer just to make it a bit more visible. So that is very useful. The last thing I want to show us is how to get started mapping if you are coming from using the tasking manager, because very many times people map with ID editor from the tasking manager, but you can also map with JOSM by using the tasking manager. So I'll just show that. So I'm just going to remove my layers from JOSM so that JOSM goes back to 0. So I'm going to go to the tasking manager here. So I'm just going to use this project 8987 for Jamaica as an example. So as you can see, I've already loaded here the tasking manager. And if you look here, there is editor. So there are 3 options for editor. There is ID editor, JOSM, and Portal. So if your intention is to use JOSM, make sure it is done, which is selected here. So you can see mine here has a red tick on it. So I'm just going to go ahead and click map a task. But before you click map a task, you have to make sure your JOSM is already running. So start your JOSM. And one of the things Michael was showing us was remote control. So also make sure your remote control is enabled in JOSM. So I'm just going to go here and choose one task. And then I say map selected task. So once I do that, automatically my JOSM is going to respond and the task is going to open up in JOSM. So these layers are loaded automatically. That is the OSM data and also the boundary for the task. So you can see the boundary and also you can see OSM data. So sometimes project managers set the imagery to also come automatically. In case it's not, you just have to read from the instructions and choose the right imagery. So for this project, the instruction was to use Bing. So I've just loaded Bing here and I can see objects here which have been mapped. And of course, I can see my layers right here, which we have already talked about. So we have OSM data, we have the boundary for the task, and we have the imagery layer. So that the different layers that we are going to use to be able to get started with mapping. So yeah, I'll just pause it there and I'll hand it over back to Russ for the next section.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Jeffrey. There was one question. Michael answered it in the panel, but if you want to, just real quick, the question was, how do you actually get the layers panel open? Yeah, do you want to?
Okay. Yeah, sure. So the windows here show you which layers are active. So if a certain a window here is missing, you can always put it back. So for example, here I have my layers activated, but I can switch it off. Even tags, I can put them off. But if I want to put them back, I just have to come here and activate layers and activate tags. So you can add them from the Windows menu, or else you can also add them from the toolbar on the left-hand panel here. These are shortcuts to the different layers which you can add and work with in your JOSM.
Excellent. Yeah, I figured that was a good one to visually show, as it's, yeah, maybe other people were wondering the same thing. So yeah, we're going to go back to Michael, but before we do, I have another poll. I'll launch real quick. This one is just, I'd like to know how folks enjoy viewing these webinars. If being on Zoom with us live is your preferred method, or if you typically watch these recorded afterwards due to time. But yeah, let us know kind of what your favorite way to attend or to view is, and then we'll let Michael get set up for the next section.
Yes, let's just wait a few seconds till people answer this question.
Yeah, sure. We're about 50% now, so you can probably go ahead and start sharing, and by the time you're ready to go, we'll be just about done.
So Okay.
Yeah, we're probably about critical mass on that. I'll just go ahead and end it if it's in your way, Michael.
Sure. Just need to get all this. Okay. So you should see my JOSM now. Is that correct? So.
Yep, I got you.
Okay. So this is part of the scenery which I loaded just as Jeffrey explained it. And well, basic editing means just introduce you to the different kinds of objects we have. Basically, they should be familiar to you from ID. Again, we have points, we have lines, open and closed. So points, the nodes just with geometrical information. In this case, what we see here is something we would really classify like a hamlet. So let's just start by adding the place. So the most important mode for that is the add mode, which is simply reached by pressing A. That's the shortcut here for the editing mode. And then we simply can add a point with a double click. So in this case, we would just place. So that's interesting. There's some offset here with my mouse. I don't quite understand. And that's pretty weird. So add a point. Okay. Something I'll figure out later on. Okay. So as such, this point, it appears now here in the selection, and it has no tags at all right now. So we need to assign any tags in order to, well, to get you some properties. The point is, in ID, you simply were presented with all those tags on the left-hand side. Here in JOSM, it is basically the menu on the top, and it's the one called presets. So the presets menu will tell you what kind of objects we have here. So in this case, it would be geography, and then it would be places, and then let's get down to the hamlet. Okay. We don't know any name. That's as usual when we work with aerial imagery. So let's leave it at that. It's just a hamlet, and let's apply the preset. And now you see that the icon for the hamlet appears in here. So if you don't know how to tag something, the most important resource for all that is, oops, that can get really nasty here. So, okay, is the map features page on the OpenStreetMap wiki. This mentions basically all the features and all the tag values for different kinds of objects, from buildings to highways, places, and it'll give you, so for instance, and it'll give you quite a number of well-populated settlements here. Hamlet, typically fewer than 100 inhabitants, and it says key place value hamlet. I mean, most typically when we work with a tasking manager, the instructions should tell you everything you need to know about the objects you are supposed to map. In any case, if you run across something else you'd like to map, or you're mapping outside of the tasking manager, the map features page in the OpenStreetMap wiki is the definitive resource. There is another resource I'd like to highlight, particularly important for the contexts where HOT is working in. As far as highways is concerned, there is a page called Highway Tag Africa, and it is a specialization of the tags used for highways in, well, not just African countries, but applicable to large parts of Latin America, for instance, as well. So because basically when you look at things from a European or North American context, you tend to say that a real road, such as an unclassified or higher road, should have a real surface like asphalt or concrete. In many of the countries where we are active, this will not be the case. So as you can see, here are some images explaining to you what tertiary or unclassified and residential roads can look like. And there is also some information in here. So mapping for hot means, as far as highway tagging is concerned, you should often refer to this highway tag Africa page. Getting back to, well, we just added a place for this settlement here. Then, well, settlements need to be connected to the road network. So we are still in the editing mode. And now that gets really, things get nasty in here. Okay, so we'll have to add the road here, basically. Sorry if that's not too precise. And with a double click, I finish drawing this line. Roads should be connected to other roads higher up in the network. So make sure that you don't only draw isolated nodes. Yes, you saw that. Well, I can go back here. When I was approaching here, the other line, it started to snap. And you should always make sure that roads snap anywhere else. So this here is, well, we can say it's a road which connects a hamlet to another road. So it's certainly okay if we say we go to the presets menu and then say highways, streets, and this would be something like an unclassified road. So the least classification for a road which provides access to a settlement would be unclassified in most contexts here. And that is basically all we can say when working from aerial imagery. We might say whether the surface is surfaced or not, but anything else is mainly only accessible when you are on the ground. So it's very important when you see any of these forms, do not try to fill in all of those fields. Only fill in fields which you know. So I've seen roads tagged with one way equals no and access equals yes and things like that. These are the defaults. So don't use that. Only enter a field or make any click one of those checkboxes if you really know that this is required. Also, please do not abuse the name field for anything else. I've seen kinds of comments in name fields, such as buildings with the name house. That's not the sense of the name. The name is the name given to an object as it is either visible on the ground or any sign, or as it is commonly known with the locals, but it should not be used for any other comments. So in this case, we apply the preset, leave it at that, because we don't know anything more about this road. Then we can try to mark this here as a settlement. So that means we do a rough outline of this settlement here. Make sure that it's closed. Go to the presets. Say it has something to do with the land use, and of course, land use here is residential area. Again, we don't know any names, so let's leave it at that. So for roads, we typically don't care about any of the directions of that line. Things change considerably when it comes to waterways. And in this imagery, we can see that a river is winding here and finally moving into the sea. So try to catch this one here, because rivers and waterways in general do have an orientation, and that orientation should be the direction of the flow. So, okay, let me try to cope with that with that issue here. So just let's do a rough outline of that here. And I'll come back to this place pretty soon, and then make just sure that it ends up here in the open sea. Again, we can use presets, in this case water, and that water would be a river. We don't know its name, so we'll leave it at that. Now we have to deal with the slight problem. The slight problem is here. We somehow have to deal with the case that this road, well, it doesn't, as it looks here from the imagery, this doesn't look like a ford, a level crossing, but it looks like a bridge. So we have to make it one. And that means, first of all, we have to cut off the road here because, well, this would be a bit too large. So, well, we could so let's add a point in here. Yep. Now I think I'm lost a bit. Sorry for that right now. I'll try that weird mouse offset will kill this for me right now. Sorry, but I'll try to restart JOSM and see if that problem gets out. So no, I wanted to cancel that. Okay, that's the new one. Coming online. Let me give this a just get back to my session here for this webinar. Okay, let me see if I'm luckier this time. Okay, okay, that looks great. Whatever that was previously. Presets, water, river. Okay. As I said, we need to mark this stretch here as a bridge. So we have to cut off this road. So let's insert a point in here just by using a double click. Let's insert another one in here roughly. Then I switch my editing mode from the drawing nodes A to select just by hitting S. The last point I generated is still selected, so holding my shift key, I can select the other one. And now we have to cut the road. So that's one of the tools we can use, so such as some splitting things. The most important point is that split way would be shortcut P, but there is also here an icon on the toolbar which says split away. So whatever we choose, hitting P or anything else, which way a segment should reuse the history, typically it selects the one with the largest number of nodes, which is pretty much okay. And then we can select just that portion, which is to become a bridge. Well, now we see here in our panels for the tags, the highway is already selected here. So just click on it and then the highway form comes back and we simply have to click. This is a bridge and we're not exactly done yet because we have to assign a layer. Well, these layers here are quite different from the layers Jeffrey has been talking about. Those layers up there is the vertical stack of layers here in the JOSM editor. The stack of layers here in the JOSM editor. Now here we are talking about a vertical stack. By default, every object has layer 0, and we need to assign layer 1 if it should be above another object. So now we see we've got the river, which has no layer attached, so that means layer 0. And we've got this portion of the highway, which is now classified as a bridge, and it says layer 1, so it will be on top of the river, and renderers can draw that right on maps. So always make sure that these options only intersect if they should intersect. There are two points I'd like to make in this context. First of all, well, you see this object here. If you go on it, you see something like natural coastline. Be very careful when you make any operation with that, because the coastline is, well, what encircles all of our land masses, and it is used in a variety of purposes. For instance, to generate polygons, which are used for rendering land masses. So please don't mess with it. As long as you just add a river to it or move points a little bit, you're pretty safe. But when it comes to splitting or joining things, unless you're somewhat experienced, you should keep a certain distance from the coastline. Well, a couple of months ago, we saw people flooding nearly the Amazon basin because something went wrong with the coastline. Just a word warning. So when we look up a little further in here, and let's see, well, there is some river crossing here. And there is one thing I'd like to introduce you to. In this toolbar, I added another icon which you won't see by default in your JOSM, and that is something like download in current view. This comes in pretty handy. I'm not sure if it's, I think, might even be one of the, well, it might even be one of the plugins. Let me just have a look. Quite sure the utils plugin, no. Okay, so then it comes by default, yeah, but this one means so this one download in current view means you simply navigate to where you would like to be, click on it, and you get, okay, conflict detected. And you see everything in this area. Now, this is a case where a river directly connects with the road. So people who mapped that before did it right. Both ways, the highway and the river, they share a common node, and this node is tagged with Ford equals yes. Particularly in our context, such information is quite crucial because in the rainy season, bridge or ford might make the difference between that crossing is navigable or not. So, well, let's get back to our little hamlet down there. And to any of the others in this area here. Here we were. As I said to you, let's go into edit mode again. If we were to draw a building, there are always various ways to do it. The way anybody of you would think of is just draw the rectangle. Then, as all the instructions tell us, don't forget to hit Q in order to square it, and then assign the preset building. Well, as far as that's man-made and it's a building. As I said previously in my introduction, there is a buildings tool. And that's something which saves you a lot of hassle. When you activate the plugin, you get an additional button in here. It's the Draw Buildings button with the shortcut of B. And that means you just start with the first line. And then when you release your mouse button, you simply extrude it until you have the rectangle, make another click, and then you've got a perfect rectangle and the tag has already been assigned. So if I go to select mode, hitting S, select this one, you see it's already a building. That can save, and as many of HOT's projects will be about buildings, this can save you a lot of work and a lot of hassle. So buildings tool will be one of your favorite toys to work when you're within JOSM. So closed lines are mainly used for buildings and for land uses, but also for some fancier objects such as multi-polygons, but that is something Ralph will talk about in a minute. Just having a quick look here at my notes. Yes, as far as the basic editing tools for points, for lines, open and closed ones, and as far as how to modify them later on, for instance, in order to draw a proper crossing between a highway and a waterway, I'm done with what I wanted to tell you. So I think, yeah, let's see if there are some questions.
Thanks, Michael. I think the questions we've had, we were able to answer via text. There's one, Caleb, I'm not sure if this got answered or not, but or if you kind of retracted the question, but I think it's a good one, is how do you activate a layer? And this was more on Jeffrey's section, but Michael, while you've got your JOSM, can you just show how to make a layer active?
Well, there is this green check mark at the front, and you can just go with the mouse down there, and then now I changed, and the aerial imagery layer is the active one, which means you don't see any of the objects. So just clicking here in the front activates or deactivates the layer. So active is something different from viewable. If I just click off the visibility, it is hidden, but I could still modify objects. Well, doesn't make sense, but just that you know the difference. Now, when the imagery layer is active, I can't edit any objects because you cannot draw on an imagery layer.
Perfect. Yeah, and that comes into play. I mean, for basic mapping, yeah, you're probably not going to run into that too much. But a lot of like what I do when I'm trying to create projects and those kind of things, I often have like a layer that's either like a country boundaries or some sort of political boundaries that I'm working off of, and also the data layer. So yeah, it is a really good thing to know, to make sure that that the layer that you really want to be editing on is the one that's active, or else yeah, you can kind of get yourself into a pickle editing on the wrong layer, or accidentally uploading the wrong layer. Those kind of things can definitely set you back and be tough to fix. So yeah, thanks for that. And Caleb, I think yeah, I wanted to make sure that that got answered because it is a good question. I think our last section is coming up with Ralph. Before I hand it over to you, Ralph, I've got one more poll. That is just a little bit about how long everybody has been participating in OpenStreetMap. I think obviously this is a basic JOSM webinar, but probably a lot of people, I mean, even myself, I spent probably a good year or two with Potlatch before I ever opened up JOSM. So yeah, just be interesting to know where everybody falls. And Ralph, yeah, go ahead. You should be able to. And I just see, yeah, Victor, I'm seeing your questions coming in right now. So yeah, while we're doing the poll, let's just, I'll quickly read them. Does JOSM work offline? The answer is yes. Yeah, and that's one of the biggest sort of benefits to the JOSM editor is we do, we often are working in situations where either we don't have good internet connection, or yeah, we're completely like in the field doing editing. Obviously, you're not able to edit the OpenStreetMap database without an internet connection, but you can do that work, through JOSM on your local device, and then upload it when you get back to the, your office, or back to a cell phone connection. Those kind of things. We often run into those situations in our field work. Second half of that is, what is the internet data consumption in comparison to other tools? It's going to be a lot less because, again, a lot of the functions in JOSM are happening locally, and it's really just that uploading and downloading of the data. Whereas with the online editors, they're kind of constantly refreshing and constantly connecting to the database. So yeah, they're consuming quite a lot more as far as data. Why should a beginner mapper choose JOSM, and what's the advantage of JOSM over ID? Yeah, I kind of hit, the big ones are really the offline capability, that ability to kind of do a lot more locally and not to be reliant on a web browser or an internet connection. For beginners, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that you should choose JOSM as a true beginner if you're, your first experience into OpenStreetMap is maybe a little bit, I shouldn't say better, but maybe you get a little bit more directly into editing if you're exposed to like IDE as your first editor versus JOSM. Obviously, as you've seen in the beginning of this webinar, it takes a little bit more to get started. So yeah, not necessarily should start with JOSM, but I would say that everybody that's involved in OpenStreetMap at some point should try JOSM, because even if you've been a long time Potlatch or IDE user, I think everybody, like, eventually, once they get a feel for JOSM and the little bit of differences in how it works, realizes how much more powerful it really is, and that you can do, you can kind of do a lot more just, yeah, in the amount of things you can touch at once, the amount of plugins and additional functionality that exists for the editor. And then Kunga, I was wondering, how would it apply to gender equality? I mean, I think that could be a good study of, like if there's an editor that's used differently by different genders, or is, more, certain genders receive or, attach to a certain editor because of look and feel or because of ease, or, I mean, that would be a great study. I don't have any answers for you, but yeah, I think that would actually be something. And I think that's kind of stuff that has been looked at to certain degrees in, gender equality and inclusivity studies in the OpenStreetMap community. But yeah, I don't know if there's really been an answer or anybody pinpointing the editor specifically. So yeah, good questions. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and
Russ, just
hand it to Ralph.
Excuse me, just one moment.
I'll close this poll. Oh, go ahead.
Russ, can I just have a few sentences? Just why should a beginner mapper choose JOSM? I mean, unless we have something like a buildings tool in ID, I mean, even the buildings tool alone is quite an argument for using JOSM at a fairly early stage. So maybe not as your first editor of choice, but at least once you decide to do a lot of mapping for HOT. Well, I think, yeah, Ralph is next, isn't it?
Yeah, Ralph, as soon as you're ready, take it away.
Yes. Yes. Hi, everyone. And I'm going to start my screen share now. Right. Hopefully you can see that I have posted a document with your keyboard shortcuts.
We see your screen.
Right. Okay, folks. One of the joys of working even with ID Editor and with JOSM is the shortcut keys. Learning to understand and know your shortcut keys helps to speed up your work and really get you moving, because you don't need to look around for the tool. You just need to press a key and you have the next tool that you want. Now, these are the basics that you're going to be using in JOSM for doing your mapping for humanitarian work. You've got your escape key, which I think you already all know. That just deselects anything within your screen. Please use the escape key before selecting or downloading, because it is very useful to have everything deselected when you're doing that. Right, then your most common used one is the S or selection tool. And that one is used for as your ordinary node selector, your line selector. So that is your cursor. But is also a drag and select a group of objects in a couple of different ways. I'll explain those soon. Control Alt lets you resize objects. Shift Control allows you to rotate objects. Now you need to be in the selection tool to use those two. The building tool, which Michael had mentioned to you for the plugins, the building tool also has some alternates. You can alternate very quickly between drawing a circle or drawing a rectangle automatically. Sorry. So that Alt plus Z and Alt plus R helps you to switch around your building tool. These others work as you are working along. So you Q for squaring buildings, M for merging nodes, G to unglue nodes, C to combine two sections into one way, A to add nodes. A is an add nodes tool, but that's also your line tool. So you add nodes with your line tool and they connect together. Shift plus J, merge two or more sections. And the X is the extrude tool, which I will also show you. I'm going to run a video of that I did previously because I have a bit of a problem with my internet. So I will do that. So let's just move on here. Do you want to take a screenshot of this? It's not necessary. I'll show you on JOSM where these various shortcut keys are so that you can also get to know them that way. Okay. Right, remember I said I would show you where you could find your shortcut keys. This is my JOSM, and I'm going to show you that when you go up to the top here, to the lines at the top, each one of those has got tools. I don't have a data layer selected, so my tools are not showing. However, as you can see here, you have your shortcut keys alongside anything that you're looking at, customize stop. So those are, let's just get those up. Here we are. When you go to your tools, you can see here, all of your shortcut keys are shown to the right of the tool that you're busy using or going to use. Under more tools, exactly the same thing. You see a couple of these that I've already mentioned, and they're all here. Terrace tool and all of that is all here. You can see the shortcut keys. Now I'm going to start your basic drawing in a video.
Yeah, and while Ralph's working on that, I'll go ahead. We have a couple of the polls that we can just share the results for. Yeah, the first one, or I guess it was the second poll that we did, was about how folks like to attend, and Zoom Live is the #1, so that's good to know that we're doing something right here. And then after that, just the recording seems to be the second favorite way of attending or viewing. So good to know. We are, we're kind of always looking at other options for how we present these webinars. So yeah, if anybody's got any specifics in mind, like it looks like quite a few people, or not, a few people answered other, 4%. So yeah, if you've got any suggestions, please let us know. And then Ralph, are you, is this still the video or is this just you live?
No, I'm ready to roll.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, folks, right. Sorry about that. I tried something, it's not working, so I'm going to take a chance on my internet and use my JOSM. Right, okay, so as I said, we're using the building tool to create a basic shape. That's B on the keyboard, and we have the basic shape. And we use the longest length, and we try to avoid using any shadows. Just the roof size. Now we have got the roof size here. As I said here, it is great because for multiple buildings, you can do this quickly. It automatically tags it as building yes. So let's use the building tool, and you can see I can draw a load of buildings very quickly. S to select, and let's delete that. So just delete. Right. So you've seen this. I've created that. But what happens if I, in actual fact, have drawn it too small, or I see someone else has drawn a building, but that building is too small. So I use the select key on my keyboard. I select the outline. I hold down the Control and the Alt, and you see my cursor changes, and I can slowly increase or decrease the size. This works just as well for round buildings. So this is absolutely great for resizing. Let me show you again the round building. Press B on my keyboard. Now I hold down the Alt key and the Z key, right? So Alt Z, and that changes. You can see there's a bullet shape now on my cursor. If I'm drawing a round building, I select the one side of the round structure, and I go across the diameter, the center line of the building, and I click once on the other side, and it automatically gives me a round building. Okay. So to get back to the rectangular tool, I press or hold down Alt and press R, and that changes. You can see the cursor icon changes as well, and we're back to doing the ordinary basic buildings. All of these automatically get tagged. So S on my keyboard for my selection, and I can see that that's all tagged as building yes. I'm going to delete that, and this is tagged building yes. I'm going to delete that. So there you are, folks. This is how quick the building tool is, which is one of the reasons why it is a favorite over the ID editor, which does not have this building tool. Now, the other thing that JOSM gives you is a load of different plugins, which work exceptionally well. And I'll show you as we're going along. Oh, yes, if you have drawn the building or you see someone else's building and it is not lining up, it's not lining up with the shape that's underneath, pressing S on your keyboard, so you've got select, you select the outline, you hold down the Shift and the Control key, and you get this kind of icon, and you can just slide it around, and then it goes back to your select key, and you can just place it in position. So that is rotating. The Shift Control key rotates the building for you, so you don't have to move it node by node. This is excellent and very quick and very helpful. You can also copy and paste. So if you've got buildings the same size, you hold down the Control and C, and then you can paste it by Control V, and you've got the building again in the right place. This works extremely well with the round building tool, with the round buildings, because you can move a round building to the next place. Remember, when you control shift, you control and copy, it copies the tagging as well. So you take the tagging with it. You don't need to tag. So this is, once again, speeds up your work and helps you with the speed of adding buildings. So let's go back and show you the round one. Go to Building Tool, Alt Z, and I've got my round one. So I can make a round building, press S on my keyboard to select. I select that, it is building yes. I can then Control C to copy it. I've automatically in S now, so I hold my key where I want the new one to go. Control V. As you can see, that is already building yes, and then I hold down the Control Alt, and I can resize it to the new round building. Okay, so that is quick and easy to do round buildings. Now, what happens when you get an L-shaped building? There is a number of ways of doing an L-shaped building. The common way is to use your building tool and draw your Control Z. Let's just Alt R to get back to a rectangle. If I use the ordinary way is to draw the one side of the building. Let me do it on a part here. Select, delete. So let's take this building here, and I'm going to do this L shape. So I use my B for building tool, and I draw the long side, and I add the building, right? Now I want to add this one. I can select this because I want it to run square with this one. I press B on my keyboard, and I can add that part there. Press S on my keyboard, hold down my Shift key because I want both of those selected. So the Shift key allows me to select more than one item. I have got this joint, and now your next quick keys is to hold down the Shift and press J. And that automatically joins it. It's automatically squared, and it's one single building, and it's tagged building yes. Now that works fine, providing you are selecting a building yes. However, if you, let's just say this is, I'm going to edit this so that you can see, I'm going to change this to building apartments. Okay. Okay, right. So when I select that, it's building apartments. However, if I press B on my keyboard and I add this section and go to S, I hold on my Shift key and I select that, and J, and I get a conflict. What is the conflict? The conflict is telling me I have to choose value because I've got both apartments and yes. And that's going to happen if I continue to do that. Okay, so there is another way that we can do this so that we don't have a problem with anything like mixed tagging. And that's called the extrude tool. So I use the X on my keyboard, and you can see the cursor changes again. I'm going to zoom in so you can see what's happening here. I move my cursor to a point where the building will come from, and I double click, I get a new node. I go to the other side, I double click, and now I have isolated this section. I can grab that and just drag it outwards. It is automatically squared, and it's automatically still tagged apartments. So a quicker way of doing this is to use the X key, extrude, and just drag a section out. You can resize one side of the building, or you can resize another side of the building, right? So the extrude tool allows you to make these shapes rather quickly without a problem of worrying about your tagging. That's your X key on the keyboard, and that extrudes. I go back to S on my keyboard. Now, I want to show you that the S key helps you do other things as well. Let's get rid of that. Let's just say I have a number of buildings that I want to square. I can use my S key, which is my cursor, and I can drag a square around, and it selects everything in the area or the buildings. But now I didn't want to select everything in the area. What I wanted to do was just select these two buildings. So I'm in my select tool, my cursor. I press S again, and you can see the cursor has changed. Okay, it's now a little knot. Now I can just drag around the buildings that I want selected. And you can see it's just selected those. However, it does select the buildings, okay, and the nodes. To get rid of the nodes, what you need to do, sorry, that hasn't happened. Here we are. Let's just do this. You can see it selects the nodes and the building all together. I can get rid of the nodes by holding down the Shift key and pressing U, and that leaves the outline, but the nodes are deselected. So Shift U will deselect the nodes when you select all, and that helps. Now you can square your buildings as you wish. Okay, and I'm still in that. I press S again to get out of that into my normal cursor again. So that's pressing the S key gets you your cursor. Pressing the S key again gives you the lasso, which is a free tool to do free line selections. Now, next one that we're going to do is a courtyard, or a complex building with a courtyard. Once again, I'm going to select my building tool. I'm going to select one side and draw that side of the building. I'm going to select this, and I'm going to use my building tool again to select this side of the building. I'm going to draw this arm of the building, and I'm going to draw this arm of the building. Right, having done that, I use my S key, so press select, hold down the Shift, and I grab all of the various components of this building, and I press Shift J to join them all up, and it automatically joins up. Now, what has happened here? If I unclick, I can see the outline is red and the inside is pink. What you've got here is a multi-polygon. It has automatically linked these two shapes together as a multi-polygon. So it will then show, as you can see, the pink outline. Let me zoom in a bit more. You can see the pink outline and the pink outline. So what happens is that you can add any other tagging to this middle part here. So if this middle part is, let's just say add, okay, I'm going to add surface. Surface is grass, okay, and I press OK. Now that that part is going to be tagged surface grass. Okay. As you can see, so that's what you have now given this area here as surface grass. One thing that you have to remember whenever you see a multi-polygon, okay, it tells you in the layers here, it tells you it's got two members. Now the problem with multi-polygons at the moment is that if you drag the outside member or one member, the other one stays still. But the result is you've offset and created a problem with the multi-polygon. So please be careful if you're moving multi-polygons. Let's put this back. If you're moving multi-polygons, make sure that you have grabbed both. Hold down the Shift key and select the inside one as well as the outside one. You've got both selected. You can drag the whole multi-polygon. Please be very careful. Check for multi-polygon before you drag a complex building. Okay, otherwise you're going to leave some of the parts behind. This will also work for waterways. Please don't do the dragging of just a single part of a polygon. Right. I showed you the extrude tool, so that is going well. I want to stop at this moment and ask if there are any questions.
Ralph, I don't see any on the chats, so.
Okay, that's great. I can move on then. Let's select another one. Right, I've chosen another area here, and I'm going to use this to show you the validation layer. Right, the validation layer is here. You can get it from your drop-down menu, or you can use the little blue tick on the left here, so that you can open up this. Now, this is another function that the ID editor is still trying to catch up with, and this helps you to validate a whole area. So click on this and run the validator, and it gives you how many items are incorrect here. Now, this is ideal if you run the validator each time before you save your work. It will tell you if there are any problems in the work you have done. If you expand that out, you can see here, it tells me I've got crossing building and highway, crossing highway and waterway, crossing highways. So it gives you a whole lot, overlapping buildings. So these are all items that you need to fix before you upload onto OpenStreetMap. So please, using JOSM, before you save your work, run the validator and check that everything is okay with your work. How can you go and fix something on your work? Let's just say these crossing highways. You select the crossing highways. You can select one of these and right click, and it gives you zoom to the problem, and it brings you straight in to the problem, and you can zoom in and you can see what the problem is here. These two highways are crossing, but there's no linking node. So any routing software or GPS tracking devices or anything like that, is not going to pick up that there's an intersection here. Your sat nav will just take you straight down this road because it doesn't know there's another road there. All intersections like this must have a node linking them so that the software can read that. So press A on your keyboard and move it until both roads are highlighted, and just press escape to deselect that. And there we have it. You have a node. So please run the validator and find out what errors there are. Make sure that buildings don't or haven't snapped onto a road. I'm going to go into my select tool. Right, let's just connect one. I put one there and I put one there. So I've got two nodes. I'm going to select that one and hold down the shift key and hold that one. Now, this is the node that's going to move. So that is selected first. That's the node it's going to move to. So I have selected those. I press M on my keyboard and it automatically snaps and joins. I'll do this again. Select the node you want to move. Hold down Shift on your keyboard and select the node you want it to move to, and press M on your keyboard and it merges. Right. Now that is what we don't want. Okay, if I run the validation again, it will tell me that I've got highway is connecting nodes, connecting highway and building. So if I go there, I can zoom to the problem and it shows me that. That is an error. We don't want that happening. How can you do that if you see someone has done that? Select the building, okay, and if you've got the building selected, press G on your keyboard. That's G. It unglues automatically. So you press G on your keyboard and you can see it's no longer joined to the road. So I'm going to go back now. So I press that. I press G to unglue. Sorry, let's get this glued. Right, I'm going to press that and G. Now both of those nodes have been unglued, and you can grab one node and just move it off the road like that without affecting the rest of the building. So there you've seen the M tool for merging, you've seen the G tool for ungluing, and you've seen the validator to help you to zoom into errors to fix before you move on. Okay, I wanted you to understand that this validator tool does pick up whole lots of things like intersections that aren't there. If you've got a node which is crossing a building, you can see it happens here. That is just crossing the building. That would be very difficult to see just with the eye, but that a validator picks it up and it helps you. It also tells you if you've got one node on top of another, if you've got roads which are on top of each other. So that is also the validator tool picks up. Those are items that you cannot quickly and easily see with the naked eye. Okay. That is the validator tool merge. Right, the others are, please make sure that your buildings don't cross over each other. Make sure that buildings that are supposed to be connected are connected, but be very careful. Okay, you use the G tool to separate this. I'm watching my internet connection, which keeps telling me it's unstable. However, if you do have buildings that are shown, I'm going to do this. use my extrude tool, and I'm going to change this one. So if I've got something like this, and I've got a second building like this, tool extrude. So if I've got two like that, and they're supposed to be one building, I can select the one, hold the Shift key, select the other, and just say Shift J, and that joins the two buildings together automatically. Okay, no problem there. If I need, let's take it back again, and once again, if I need to separate them, I select the one, I press G on the keyboard, and I can see that now those nodes have been deselected. I can then Q to square that up and remove the extra node, and I have got two buildings. So please don't join buildings unnecessary, and if they are incorrectly joined, please separate them. That helps us a great deal when we're validating and correcting work. The no-nos are that buildings should not overlap. Okay, we should not have buildings inside buildings. We should not have buildings linked to roads or to woods or to anything else. Buildings should be standalone whenever possible. Tagging, once again, as Michael mentioned, please do not tag as apartments or houses or anything like that unless you specifically know that it is that. Now, there's one other thing that I want to show you. I'm going to show you here, yes. How do we add an island? Remember I told you multi-polygons for buildings? You can use multi-polygons for waterways as well. So I'm going to split this. I would like, if I create a multi-polygon, I don't want the whole river to be a multi-polygon because that's going to be way too much. So I want to add this island. I press A on my keyboard and I draw the island. You see I've snapped there. I don't want to snap there, so I'm going to do hold Control on your keyboard if you don't want it to snap to anything else. Okay. Now, all these islands in rivers are not islands. When I press S on my keyboard, select this. These are not islands, these are islets, okay? And to do that, we tag it as a place and we tag it as an islet. You see here, islet, place, okay. And it comes up in a different color to the river. Now, to join this, I don't want this river running through, so I will take the river down its natural channel down the side. There we are. I can put in another waterway running down the other side to show that there's a water channel there. Now I'm going to separate this. So Shift, I'm selecting that one, and I'm pressing P on my keyboard. P on my keyboard. Okay, and I'm going to press those and press G to unglue them, and it won't unglue them. Okay, so I'm going to select this area and press A on my keyboard because I want to close this off, and I connect to there. Right. Select this. Hold down Shift, select that node, press A on my keyboard, and close that. I need to close the other one as well, so I select that. I'll hold Shift on my keyboard. I select the node, press A, and I close that off. I can do the same at the other side. Select a node that I want across from each other. So I hold that and I hold that. I hold Shift down and I select both of those. I press P to separate them from each other. I press S and I have my selection. I select the outline. I select this node and that gives me my A to select that and close that off. This needs to be closed off as well. Shift, select A, close it off. Right, so that one is complete, that one is complete, and that one is complete. Now I have got this separated out. I select that, I select the eyelet as well. Now I've got both selected, and I go up to my mode tools. Sorry, I go up to my tools, and I come down here, and I create multi-polygon. Right, I've now got a multi-polygon, and it's got two items. Right, see, two members, multi-polygon riverbank. Now, I can do this with a shortcut key. If I have selected both, all I have to do is use the Shift V. So that's a shortcut key. And now I have a multi-polygon, which will show up this eyelet as separate. It will not get a blue fill. Okay. Are there any questions at this stage?
There's actually a couple, but they're not necessarily related to what you're talking about. So, Caleb, maybe we'll just hold your questions and let Ralph finish up.
Okay. He says, what kind of error do you get when trying to upload? I can do that right now because I've got my JOSM open. I can create an error here. Let's just do a building that crosses over the waterway. And I can do a node which is linked to that as well. So when I want to upload, I go to upload and it comes up with a notice, suspicious data found. It's telling me a multi-polygon outerway shares segment with other ring. That's the two buildings that have connected. So it says there's a crossing barrier highway. It says I've got crossing building waterway. So this is the kind of error that will come up. What you do is you cancel. You can see down here in your validation panel, it's got the errors there as well. So if you have not run your validator and fixed the errors before you upload, you will get a warning from JOSM that you have some problems. You can either continue to upload and upload all of those errors as well, which we do not like and do not recommend. But you can cancel that and go back and start correcting these errors so that you don't have them going down, loading onto your OpenStreetMap. So right, any other questions that I can help with at this stage, or do you want to take over, Russ?
Oh, are you pretty much done? Is that, are you concluding your section?
Yep, I'm concluded my section for now.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead and stop and I'll take over. But yeah, there's a couple people asking about the recording. Yeah, we always try to get these recordings up when we can, as long as they come out okay from the Zoom server. But yeah, there's always a chance that something doesn't go right, and we don't post this one. But there are plenty of others. We do that, like I was saying at the beginning. We do this one as well as the advanced JOSM training roughly twice a year. So yeah, if this one doesn't go up, then the previous one will already, or is already, and the next one will hopefully. So let me also just switch. Yeah, so the other questions, yeah, Caleb actually, he was asking more about server error style problems with uploading. So those ones, yeah, it's really kind of specific. Most likely it was something to do with your OpenStreetMap authentication. I think there's like 3 different ways you can do the authentication, and sometimes you just have to play with it and see which one actually goes through and it accepts. And some of that's based on your internet connection, and if there's any sort of glitch while it's trying to do that, then you'll have to do it the manual way, etc. Yeah, so if you can get us a screen capture or something, we can help you a little bit more on the actual server errors you're getting. And then yeah, I think the merge question Ralph answered as he was going through, whether you use the join, the J, or merge. I think they're actually the same. Or well, I guess merging is more like merging layers together, whereas joining objects. But yeah, let us know if your question is still pending on that, Caleb. Yeah, and I think that answers all the questions. Yeah, I've got to hop off pretty quick as well, but let us know. We can always address stuff on Slack too. Maybe I'll throw that in the chat real quick. So if you go to slack.holosm.org, that's a great way to get a hold of not only us, but yeah, if you're having like technical issues with the tasking manager, those kind of things, Slack is definitely a good way to find somebody to help you there. As I'm showing, this concludes the basics. We will have an advanced, I think we have the date set, we just haven't actually set up the registration for it yet. But yeah, expect that to come out soon. But actually next week, we will have a validation with JOSM webinar. So, if this was your first exposure to JOSM, you might want to wait until the next one. We actually do that one we do it on the 4th and 25th of every month. So yeah, definitely plenty of opportunities to take that one. But if you feel like you're up to trying out helping others, then definitely jump on that webinar. The link there, that bit.ly link, that is the capital hot WG, that's all of our working groups calendar. So not just these webinars, but also if you want to get involved with the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team as a volunteer in other ways besides mapping, also check out that calendar and just check out all the different working groups that are going on. As I said at the beginning, and actually the slide's a little bit wrong. This is technically a training working group webinar, but we kind of do these in collaboration with our community working group. So if you want to also help put together future webinars on different topics, if you're an expert in something or really think that the community would benefit from learning about a special topic, definitely the community working group is kind of the go-to group for organizing, topics or webinars on all kinds of topics, and then also the training working group. We kind of specialize in these kind of webinars, which is kind of technical skill training. But yeah, there's lots of stuff happening in HOT that you can get involved with. That calendar is a good place to start. The Slack group is our key place to communicate. If you want to just jump on there and talk to folks about what your passion is and how you want to get involved, I would suggest heading there. I don't see any other questions coming up, so yeah, actually the link is going to be the same. I mean, eventually we'll have a more direct link, but if you just keep your eye on or subscribe to that YouTube channel, then as soon as the webinar is up, you will get a notice. Michael, Jeffrey, Ralph, thanks again for another great JOSM Basics.